In the ancient kingdom of Umidike, a young trader named Chidi was known for his sharp intellect and growing wealth. His reputation was as bright as the golden sun, respected in every marketplace, from Lagos to Kano. Traders admired his skill in negotiation, his business expanding with each passing year. Chidi's skill was unparalleled, and his name alone attracted customers from villages near and far. Yet despite his growing wealth, Chidi's heart felt as empty as a dry well in the harmattan season. His fellow traders would often say, "Chidi, what good is a full purse if there's no one to share its contents?" Even the Amir's chief merchant once remarked, "A man without a wife is like a kingdom without a ruler." It was during the annual Umidike festival that Chidi's life took an unexpected turn. Amid the sound of drums, the smell of roasted yams, and the laughter of children, he saw her, Adana, a young woman of quiet beauty. Unlike the other maidens who wore jewelry and fine dresses, Adana was simply dressed, her hair tied back modestly. Yet her laughter rang like a bell through the crowd, her presence magnetic and graceful. She was the daughter of Obesai, the renowned village herbalist, a healer whose knowledge and skill were respected throughout the land. Chidi, usually so focused on his business, found himself drawn to her. He watched her with curiosity, feeling an unfamiliar stirring in his heart, a sensation that had nothing to do with profit or commerce. He approached her that day, a simple yet bold move that started a quiet courtship. Unlike other suitors, who might have brought extravagant gifts, Chidi's tokens of affection were thoughtful and unique, a rare herb from a distant land, a precious scroll he had acquired from traders. Adana's appreciation was sincere, and soon, their connection deepened. Their love story became the talk of the village. Elders watched with approval, noting how their personalities balanced one another. "She tempers his ambition, and he draws out her spirit," they would say. When they married, the village joined in joyous celebration. Lanterns hung from trees, music filled the air, and dancers moved in graceful rhythms, while children laughed and played. The griots sang of their union, comparing it to the river's flow, steady, deep, and unbreakable. That night, they were surrounded by friends and family, and the stars seemed to shine a little brighter. In their modest home, Chidi and Adana created a life filled with joy and shared dreams. Though Chidi was a wealthy merchant, he valued his life with Adana above all his material possessions. Often, he would say, "A full purse is empty if there is no one to share it with." Together, they dreamed of children, especially a son, someone to inherit Chidi's skills and continue his legacy. The thought of raising a child who would learn his ways and walk in his footsteps filled Chidi with pride and anticipation. When Adana began to show signs of pregnancy, the village celebrated with them. Elders offered blessings, mothers whispered prayers, and children played, pretending to guess the baby's gender. A sense of expectation filled the air, and Chidi and Adana's love only grew stronger as they prepared for the new life joining their family. Adana began to sew tiny garments and gather herbs that would strengthen and protect the child. Each evening, Chidi would place his hand on her belly, whispering hopes and dreams for the future. This child, they believed, would be blessed with intelligence, kindness, and strength, a reflection of both his parents. With every passing day, the anticipation grew, and the whole village waited, eager to meet the child who would carry forward the name of Chidi the trader. They believed he would bring prosperity, hope, and pride to the family and the community. But unknown to them, fate had woven a different path. What lay ahead would challenge not only their expectations but their deepest beliefs. For in those days, a first pregnancy was considered as delicate as morning dew on a spider's web. Chidi's joy knew no bounds, but with it came the weight of generations of tradition pressing upon his shoulders. His family line traced back to the great merchant princes of the Hausa states, men whose trading empires had stretched across the Sahara like golden threads in a royal tapestry. A son, the elders would whisper in his ear during evening gatherings, "Your line must continue through a son." Following ancient custom, Chidi sought the wisdom of Baba Jumai, the most revered Babalawo in all of Umidike. The old oracle's compound lay at the edge of the village, where the bustling sounds of the market faded into the whispers of spirits. "I see double shadows in your future," the old man had said, his eyes clouded with visions. "The moon will split, and with it, your destiny. But beware, Chidi, for the marks of the ancestors do not always appear as we expect them." But Chidi, in his excitement, had only what his heart wished to hear, the promise of continuation. Adana's pregnancy months were filled with ritual and preparation. Her mother brought her special herbs gathered by moonlight to ensure the child's wisdom. Yet even in this time of joy, strange omens began to appear. The normally clear skies of Umidike were frequently crossed by pairs of eagles. The ancient baobab tree in the marketplace, which had stood silent for generations, was heard to groan in the still of night. Chidi grew more protective with each passing moon. He hired additional guards for his compound and doubled the offerings at the ancestral shrine. His trading journeys, once lasting weeks, were cut short as he refused to be far from Adana. In the final month, dreams began to haunt Adana's sleep. She dreamed of twin moons in the sky, of ancient kings wearing marks of power, of children walking opposite paths. But when she tried to share these visions with Chidi, he would silence her with gentle words. "Dreams are like morning mist, my love. They fade before the sun of reality." As the time drew near, tension filled the air like the heavy stillness before a great storm. The finest midwife in Umidike, Mama Jahara, was summoned to stay in the compound, her eyes watchful, her hands ready. The night Adana went into labor, the heavens themselves seemed to hold their breath. In Chidi's compound, the air was thick with tension and the sweet smoke of burning herbs. Mama Jahara, her silver hair gleaming in the lamplight, moved through the bathing chamber with the quiet authority of one who had guided countless souls into the world. Her assistants scurried like shadows, preparing hot water, clean cloths, and the sacred bathing stool passed down through generations. "The night has chosen well," Mama Jahara murmured, her weathered hands checking Adana's pulse. "When the moon wears the color of life, strong children are born." But even as she spoke these words of comfort, her eyes betrayed concern at the unusual intensity of the labor pains. Outside the bathing chamber, Chidi paced the courtyard like a caged lion, his footsteps wearing paths in the sandy earth. His most trusted servant, old Baba Kamis, sat quietly in the corner, counting prayer beads and watching his master's growing anxiety. "God is merciful," Baba Kamis would say whenever Chidi's pacing brought him near. "The same moon that watches tonight watched over your father's birth, and his father's before him." The midwives gasped, making signs against evil, for such omens were rare and powerful. "I see the head." Mama Jahara's voice rang out. "Push, daughter of warriors, push." The first baby slipped into the world as the red moon reached its highest point. But instead of the customary cry of a newborn, there was a moment of profound silence. Mama Jahara's sharp intake of breath cut through the quiet like a knife. There, on the child's face, stretching from his left temple to his jaw, was a birthmark in the shape of a crescent moon, identical to the one now hanging in the sky above. Before anyone could fully process this sight, Adana's pains resumed with renewed intensity. "Another comes," Mama Jahara announced, her voice tight with surprise. "The ancestors have blessed us with twins." The second boy arrived as the first rays of dawn began to paint the sky, perfect and unmarked as a fresh palm leaf. When word reached Chidi that he had been blessed with twin sons, he fell to his knees in gratitude. But his joy was short-lived. As he entered the bathing chamber, his eyes first fell upon his second-born, beautiful, unmarked, and crying lustily. A smile split his face as he reached for the child. Then he saw the firstborn. The proud father's expression froze, the blood draining from his face as he beheld the birthmark. In the growing light of dawn, it seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly quality. Chidi stumbled backward, his hand raised as if to ward off an evil spirit. "What is this curse upon my house?" he whispered hoarsely. "What have the spirits done to my son?" Mama Jahara stepped forward, her voice stern with the authority of her years. "Mind your words, Chidi of Umidike. This mark is no curse, it is a sign. In all my years, I have never seen its like, but the old stories speak of such marks among the ancient kings." But Chidi seemed not to hear her. His eyes were fixed on the unmarked child, his arms reaching only for the second-born. "This," he declared, lifting the younger twin, "this is my true heir. He shall be called Kweku, born of nobility." Adana, weak from the birth but alert enough to sense the darkness entering their lives, pulled the marked child closer to her breast. "Then our firstborn shall be Jayasai," she said softly, but with steel in her voice, "for he is indeed wonderful, regardless of what marks he bears." The naming ceremony, held on the 7th day after birth, set the tone for years to come. While both children were to be presented to the community in the grand courtyard of the Amir's palace, only one would receive the full blessing of tradition. For Kweku, the unmarked son, Chidi spared no expense. But when it came time to present Jayasai, the marked firstborn, Chidi stood back, his face a mask of stone. It was Adana who stepped forward, her head held high despite her weakness, to present her firstborn to the community. The whispers rose like locusts in the air as the assemblage beheld the birthmark. "A sign," some murmured. "A curse," others whispered. The moon's own touch, the oldest among them said, their eyes bright with ancient memories. As the twins grew from infants to toddlers, the difference in their treatment became as stark as night and day. Kweku was given the finest sleeping chamber in the children's quarter, its walls freshly painted with protective symbols, while Jayasai was relegated to a small room near the servants' quarters, its walls bare and windows narrow. Yet it was in these early years that the first signs of each child's true nature began to emerge. Kweku, pampered and praised, grew demanding and quick to anger. His cries would echo through the compound like a market horn, bringing servants running to attend his every whim. But Jayasai, despite his father's coldness, showed a quietness that spoke not of fear, but of deep understanding. Adana, watching her sons with a mother's keen eye, noticed how Jayasai would sit for hours in the courtyard, observing the traders who came to do business with his father. While Kweku played with expensive toys brought from distant lands, Jayasai learned the secret language of commerce. The old groundskeeper, Baba Komis, became Jayasai's unlikely protector. In the cool of the evenings, when Chidi was busy with his accounts and Kweku was being tutored in arithmetic, Baba Komis would tell Jayasai stories beneath the ancient neem tree in the servants' quarter. "You see this tree, young master," he would say, his voice soft like shifting sand. "Some call it twisted because it grows not straight like others. But see how its shade gives rest to more travelers than any other tree in the compound. Sometimes, what others call a flaw is God's own mark of special purpose." Adana, though unable to show open preference, found ways to nurture both her sons equally. She would send her trusted maid, Amina, to bring Jayasai secretly to her chambers when Chidi was away on trade journeys. There, she would teach him the ancient healing knowledge of her father's line, noting with pride how quickly he absorbed the learning. "Your mark," she would tell him, gently touching the crescent on his face, "is like the moon itself, a light in darkness. Never let anyone make you ashamed of it." But the world beyond the compound walls was not so kind. When the twins began to venture into the marketplace with their nursemates, the reactions were immediate and harsh. Traders who would bow deeply to Kweku would avert their eyes from Jayasai. Children would point and whisper, sometimes making signs against evil. Yet even here, patterns began to emerge that none could ignore. When Kweku passed through the market, traders would treat him like a prince. But when Jayasai passed by, the oldest among them would fall strangely silent, some even touching their foreheads in a gesture so ancient its meaning had been lost to time. The contrast grew sharper with each passing season. During the harvest festival, Kweku would be dressed in the finer silk from Damascus, seated at his father's right hand. Jayasai would watch from the shadows, clothed in simple cotton, yet his eyes missing nothing. While Kweku learned to demand, Jayasai learned to observe. The twins reached their 7th year, the age when young boys of noble merchant families were sent to Makarantan Alo, the prestigious school that had educated Umidike's finest minds for generations. The morning of their first day dawned bright and clear. Kweku arrived at the school gates astride a young stallion, his robes crisp and new. Behind him, Jayasai walked quietly, his simple cotton robes clean but plain, the crescent birthmark seeming to glow in the early light. Emeka, the aged headmaster, stood at the entrance to greet his new pupils. His eyes, sharp as a desert hawk's despite his years, lingered on Jayasai's mark. The old teacher's hand trembled slightly as he touched his own forehead, a gesture that did not go unnoticed by the watching mothers. "I have taught the sons of emirs and the children of camel drivers," Emeka announced to the assembled parents, "but never have I seen." He stopped himself, noting Chidi's darkening expression. "Never have I seen such an interesting pair of brothers." The differences between the twins became even more pronounced within the school's mud brick walls. Kweku, expected to excel, struggled with the simplest verses. His frustration would erupt in bursts of temper that sent younger students scurrying for cover. Yet no matter how poorly he performed, Chidi's gifts to the school ensured that praise was heaped upon him. Jayasai, however, revealed gifts that could not be ignored. "Watch," Emeka would say to visiting scholars, "watch what happens when we present him with any trading problem." They would post complex calculations, caravans with different goods, varying prices, multiple destinations. Jayasai would close his eyes, the birthmark pulsing slightly, and provide answers faster than the merchants could check their counting boards. One particular incident at the school became the talk of Umidike for weeks. A wealthy trader from Kano had stopped to observe the classes, presenting the students with a riddle that had stumped his own accountants. If a caravan leaving Kano with silk meets 3 other caravans on the road, each trading different portions of their goods at different prices, what would be the final profit in gold pieces? While other students scratched figures in the sand, and Kweku sulked in the corner, Jayasai stood and calmly detailed not only the final profit but also identified a hidden error in the trader's original calculations. The Kano merchant was so impressed that he immediately offered to sponsor Jayasai's further education. Chidi's response was swift and harsh. "My son Kweku will inherit my trading empire," he declared publicly. "The marked one needs no such education." The servants whispered how they would find Jayasai in the courtyard late at night, practicing calculations by moonlight. Market women began to slip him manuscripts hidden in baskets of fruit, and elderly traders would accidentally leave their accounting scrolls where he could find them. Adana, watching everything with a mother's worried eyes, saw how the birthmark seemed to shine brighter whenever Jayasai learned something new. "Your father may blind himself," she would say, applying healing herbs to the wounds of his latest punishment, "but others are beginning to see." Indeed, strange incidents began to multiply. Traveling men would stop in their tracks upon seeing Jayasai, offering blessings in ancient tongues. Old women in the market would press protective amulets into his hands, whispering about royal signs and old prophecies. As the twins reached their 15th year, the great trade routes that had brought wealth to Umidike for generations began to whisper with troubling news. Chidi, now graying at the temples but still commanding respect in the marketplace, decided it was time for Kweku to begin learning the family business in earnest. "My son," he proclaimed during evening prayers, "you shall sit at my right hand and learn the secrets that have made our family's name great." His eyes purposefully avoided Jayasai, who sat quietly in the shadows, the birthmark gleaming faintly in the lamplight. Kweku's introduction to the trading world was like a sandstorm hitting the marketplace. The old traders would exchange knowing glances as deals began to slip away like water through cupped hands. "Have care, young master," one turned, a trader who had known Chidi for 30 years. "The desert roots care nothing for fine clothes or proud words. They respect only wisdom and patience." But Kweku, pampered since birth, had learned neither. Within months, 3 major trading partnerships that had sustained the family for generations were strained to breaking. The sons of old trading partners, once eager to maintain their father's alliances, began taking their business elsewhere. Meanwhile, Jayasai, though banned from the main trading halls, had created his own subtle network. In the quiet corners of the marketplace, his predictions about prices and routes were repeated in hushed, respectful tones. One fateful evening, a crisis erupted that would shake the foundations of Chidi's trading empire. A massive caravan, carrying the season's entire investments in silk and gold, was reported lost in the desert. Kweku, who had insisted on changing the route against the advice of experienced guides, had doomed the venture with his pride. The news spread through the market like fire through dry grass. Creditors began appearing at Chidi's compound, demanding payment. Old trading partners whispered about calling in ancient debts. For the first time, worry lines appeared on Chidi's proud face. That night, Jayasai sat alone in his small room, the moonlight casting a silvery glow on his birthmark. Through his network of humble friends, he had learned something that no one else knew. The caravan wasn't lost at all, but had been guided by old desert spirits to a safe haven, waiting out a great sandstorm. He also knew something else. His brother Kweku, in his desperation to hide his mistake, was secretly planning to sell off their father's most precious trading contracts to cover his losses, contracts that had been in the family for 7 generations. Adana, finding her Mark son deep in thought, touched his shoulder gently. "The moon is full tonight," she whispered, "just as it was on your birth. Perhaps it's time for the truth to shine as bright as your mark." Jayasai looked up at his mother, his eyes reflecting a wisdom far beyond his years. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "everything will change. The old prophecies speak of a time when true worth must be revealed, when ancient science will no longer be denied." Dawn broke over Yumidaike's marketplace. The news had spread faster than desert fire. Chidi's trading empire stood on the edge of collapse. Inside, Chidi sat in his counting room, his proud shoulders finally bowed under the weight of impending disaster. Before him lay scattered papers, proof of Kweku's disastrous decisions. The lost caravan was only the beginning. Secret debts, foolish gambles, and arrogant mistakes formed a web that threatened to strangle their family's legacy. "Father," Kweku's voice trembled as he stood before Chidi, "I have found a solution. The merchant corner from Timbuktu offers enough gold to cover our debts. He asks only for our family's ancient trading routes in return." His words hung in the air like poison. The color drained from Chidi's face. These routes, passed down through 7 generations, were worth more than gold. They were the very foundation of their family's power. "You fool!" Chidi's voice cracked like thunder. "Would you sell our family's soul to cover your mistakes?" But before Kweku could respond, a quiet voice spoke from the doorway. "There is another way." All eyes turned to see Jayasai standing there, his birthmark seeming to pulse with an inner light in the dim room. The usual shadows that haunted his presence had fallen away, replaced by an aura of quiet authority that made even the angry creditors fall silent. "The caravan is not lost," Jayasai continued, his voice carrying the weight of certainty. "It shelters at the hidden oasis of Amora, 3 days right south of the River of Storms." Chidi's eyes narrowed. "How could you possibly know this?" "The same way I know that Connell's offer is a trap," Jayasai replied calmly. "His gold is borrowed from the coastal pirates. He seeks not just our roots, but our destruction." The assembled merchants murmured. Everyone knew of Connell's recent mysterious rise to power, but none had discovered its source. Prove it, Kweku challenged, his face flushed with anger and fear. Prove any of this. Jayasai turned to the oldest merchant present, a man known as the keeper of records. Honored one, check your scrolls. 3 generations ago, was there not a similar attempt to seize these trading routes? The marks of the true path are written in the old symbols that match this. He touched his birthmark gently. The ancient merchant's hands trembled as he unrolled a yellowed parchment. By God's mercy, he whispered, the boy speaks truth. The signs are the same. But Jayasai wasn't finished. From his simple robes, he produced a small leather pouch. These are records of every trade made in our family's name over the past year. He began to read, detailing hidden losses and secret gains, revealing the true state of their business with uncanny precision. The marketplace held its breath. Every figure matched the merchant's private records exactly. Even Chidi's most trusted accountants stared in amazement. And here, Jayasai continued, pulling out one final scroll, is the true map to reach our caravan. Not the common roads that everyone knows, but the secret paths that our ancestors used, marked by stars and ancient signs that. He paused, touching his birthmark again, that some of us can still read. For the first time in 15 years, Chidi really looked at his marked son. Really saw him. In that moment, the sounds of the marketplace seemed to fade away, and he remembered the words spoken on the night of the twins' birth, the marks of the ancestors do not always appear as we expect them. Standing before him was not the curse he had feared, but perhaps the very blessing that could save everything he held dear. The choice is yours, father, Jayasai said quietly. Trust in Connell's false gold, or let me show you the true path our ancestors left for us to follow. Time seemed to stand still in the marketplace as Chidi stood before his 2 sons, one dressed in silk but shrinking in shame, the other in simple cotton but standing tall, his birthmark glowing with an otherworldly light in the desert sun. 3 days, Chidi finally spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of decision. We will follow the marked one's path. But if the caravan is not found, both my sons will answer to the creditors with their lives. A small group was assembled for the journey, Chidi, his sons, 3 trusted guards, and, to everyone's surprise, old Boba Komis, who insisted on coming despite his age. As they prepared to leave, a commotion arose at the marketplace entrance. I am Kelchi, the elder announced, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. I have walked the trade routes since before your father's fathers were born. The signs told me I would be needed here. The old man's eyes fixed on Jayasai's birthmark, and he smiled. Oh, finally. The moon's chosen one returns. Their journey began as the sun climbed high. While others rode fine horses, Jayasai walked ahead on foot, seemingly reading signs invisible to others. His birthmark paused stronger with each passing hour, like a living compass pointing their way. On the second night, as they camped beneath stars that blazed like scattered diamonds, Kelchi gathered them around the fire. His weathered hands drew patterns in the sand that matched perfectly with Jayasai's birthmark. Long ago, he began, his voice carrying the rhythm of ancient tales, the great trading kingdoms were guided by those marked by the moon. They could read the desert secrets. But pride and greed led us to ignore these chosen ones, until their gifts were forgotten. It was prophesied that when the kingdoms faced their darkest hour, the moon would mark a child again. Chidi's hands trembled as he remembered his years of cruelty. Kweku stared at the sand, shame written across his features. The third day brought them to a massive wall of dunes that seemed impossible to cross. The caravan is lost, Kweku declared bitterly. We should turn back. But Jayasai stood absolutely still, his birthmark blazing like captured moonlight. Listen, he whispered. The ancient kings left signs for those who could read them. He began to walk, following a pattern only he could see. Suddenly, a narrow path appeared between the dunes, hidden from all but the most knowing eyes. As they followed it, the path twisted like a serpent through the sand mountains, finally opening into a hidden valley. There, sheltered in a grove of palm trees around an ancient well, the caravan leader rushed forward upon seeing them. By God's mercy, we found this place just as the storm hit. It was as if the desert itself guided us here. But how did you find us? Before anyone could respond, Kelchi raised his staff, pointing to ancient inscriptions carved into the well stone walls. There, worn by centuries of desert winds but still visible, was the same crescent mark that graced Jaisai's face. This was once a royal waypoint, Kelchi declared, his voice ringing with authority. Used by the king-guided caravans of old. Only those blessed with the moon's mark could find it. He turned to Chidi. Your eldest son bears the sign of the ancient ruling houses. The mark you scorned as a curse was always a blessing, a gift from your ancestors to save their legacy through their true chosen heir. Chidi fell to his knees before his mark son, tears cutting tracks through the desert dust on his face. My son, he whispered, can you forgive a father who was too blind to see the blessing God had given him? The return to Umidike was like a scene from ancient legends. As word spread of the caravan's miraculous rescue, people lined the streets to catch a glimpse of the procession. But this time Jaisai rode at the front, his birthmark shining while Chidi and Kweku followed behind. The marketplace erupted in celebration. Merchants who had once sneered at Jaisai's mark now touched their foreheads in reverence as he passed. Kweku will remain my brother and partner, Jaisai declared before the assembled merchants. For the moon's blessing teaches us that light and shadow must work as one. Kweku, humbled by his brother's forgiveness, knelt and pledged his loyalty. Chidi, his heart finally opened, gathered both his sons before the great assembly. I was given 2 blessings, he proclaimed, his voice thick with emotion, but my foolish pride allowed me to see only one. Adana, watching her family unite at last, saw her years of secret hopes bloom like desert flowers after rain. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe our channel.